Kia ora team, my name is Ben, and today we're going to have a quick refresh over planes of motion. So planes of motion are the imaginary lines that divide our body into 3 dimensions. So we use these things when we're looking at an anatomical diagram. We want to know what plane of motion the diagram was cut in when we're looking at it, and we also use it to describe movement. So what plane of motion is someone using when they're bowling a ball or doing this physical activity? The first things first, you can have a quick refresh of the anatomical position, which we talked about here with Sage, and directional terms, and then let's talk about the planes. The first plane of motion is sagittal, and it's also known as the anterior-posterior division, and it divides us into the right and left segment. So if you imagine if someone's got a samurai sword and they chop you straight down the middle and it divides you into left and right, then that is the sagittal plane. If you imagine the samurai sword and the person's hand, then that is the movement in the sagittal plane. So this movement is moving in the sagittal plane. For example, doing a front raise in the gym or swimming freestyle would be in the sagittal plane. So with the sagittal plane, we can also divide that into parasagittal, which is any plane that's parallel to the midline. The mid-sagittal plane, which chops straight down the middle, right down the dead center. The next plane is our frontal plane, and that's nice and easy to remember. So the frontal plane is if someone gets a samurai sword and they chop you right down through here. So it chops you into front and back. An example of that is a star jump would be performed in the frontal plane. Another name for the frontal plane is the coronal plane. The next plane is our transverse plane. So transverse plane or horizontal plane, you can imagine this goes in this direction. So if you got your sword and chopped off someone's head, then that would be through the transverse plane. An example of a movement in the transverse plane would be throwing a frisbee, dancing the twist, or if you look at the humerus during a bench press movement, then the humerus is moving in the transverse plane. Alright, good work team. Those are our 3 planes of motion.